All right, y'all. What's going on? It's Combo Breaker 99 back with another one, y'all. All right, y'all. So this is another question. We've been kind of talking about a little bit in the live the other day. Yeah, about a week ago. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on it a little bit more here because we didn't really get too deep into it, but this was a question that came up too about Zhang Weili. Look, I know the fight hasn't even taken place yet. And look, I'm not trying to give away my pick with this answer either or with this question, but y'all know who I'm kind of leaning towards in this matchup coming up. But it's still be a good fight. All right. It's going to be a good fight. Shevchenko and Zhang is going to be a good fight, y'all. I mean, we're getting closer. Look, we're less than a month away. So, yeah, we're going to talk about this thing. But right now, I just want to answer this question here because some of y'all want to know, will Zhang Weili move back down to strawweight if she loses the fight against Valentina Shevchenko, or if she was to beat Shevchenko? Some people are asking, do you think she'll move back down to 115? Like, is it just a one-shot deal? Like, if she wins the belt, makes history, beats Valentina Shevchenko, is she gonna move back down and just become a strawweight again? That's a possibility, right? Well, I think that if Zhang Weili does lose against Valentina Shevchenko in November, I think it could be a high possibility of her moving back down, but I could see her staying at flyweight. I think it's really all going to depend on what her performance looks like, how she feels about her performance, and just how she feels at the weight as well. I think it's going to come down to several of those factors there because as Zhang Weili's getting older, it could be harder for her to make weight. She's always made weight. She's never really struggled, but we never know like the struggles behind the scene, right? And yeah, you getting up there in age, late 30s, sometimes it can get tough to make 115, and let's say if she feels good at 125, win or lose, she could probably stick it out. So I think that moving back down to 115 really comes down to how her performance is on November 15th, But let's say if she does lose against Valentina, like let's say if she does lose pretty bad too, let's say if she gets ragdolled and big sistered in there and just beat up by Valentina, like she doesn't belong at 125. I think that for sure enough, she's gonna move back down to 115, which will be for good reason because if she can't handle Valentina Shevchenko, she gets handled physically or technically as well. Imagine what the other girls are going to do to her. Imagine what girls like even Agrassa could do, and Natalia Silva, especially Manon. Manon's a number one contender again, and that could be a fight that she could run into if she wants to stick around at 125 if she loses to Valentina, right? So let's say if she loses to Valentina badly, there's so many other bigger girls out there that could do the same or maybe even worse, right? Because a lot of them are just going to say, okay, I can handle this little move, this little blown up straw weight, she wants to move up here and think it's easy. I can handle this, So I think that's a high possibility she will go back down to 115 if she, goes in here and gets dominated or finished by Valentina. And that would be fine. That would be fine because we all know there's a possibility of Mackenzie Dern versus Zhang Weili. That could be a good return for her at 115. And if she was to do it, she could set another record. She could set another record and become a 3-time strawweight champion, right? She can always move back down and, reclaim her throne at strawweight and just finish out her career there. So there's always an option for Zhang Weili. She can go up here, test herself for greatness. If that doesn't work, become a 3-time strawweight champion, So I could see her moving back down to 115 if things don't go well as far as the weight. But let's say she puts up a good fight. Let's say if she puts up a good fight against Valentina, comes up short, maybe loses by split decision, and she actually scores some knockdowns against Valentina, or if she just holds her own and gets Valentina's respect, I could see her trying to run it back against Valentina Shevchenko for good reason. Like if she's able to maybe fight Valentina like to a split decision loss or a draw and actually make for like a fight of the night type of thing, like between her and Joanna, I could see her sticking out 125 for that rematch, for that very reason. If they put on a show and this fight does really, really well, you could definitely see her sticking it out at 125 because number one, that's going to tell us that she feels good at the weight, that she prepared properly, and that she could do it on the next go round, and that she probably filled out the flyweight the right way, So yeah, those are just some of the reasons why I could see her staying. But if she wins the belt, that's still another question in itself. Like if she did beat Valentina and win the belt, like I don't know, like because again, I didn't really see like this long term goal for Zhang Weili, because there was a couple interviews where she was just like, I want to move up to fight Valentina. Like even whenever the possibility of Manon beating Valentina was when that was a possibility, I never really heard her say, I'll fight either one of them. Like I want to fight the winner of Valentina and Manon. I never heard that. I was just always Valentina, Valentina, Valentina. So if she was to win the belt, I think that would be something her and her team would probably try to discuss. Like, are we big enough for this division? Are we strong enough? There's so many other bigger girls. The bigger, stronger grapplers like Aaron, the bigger, stronger women like Manon. There's still a fighter that we lost to 2 times up here, Rose. So just so many different challenges up here, which could be a nightmare for her. But if she really wants to be great and set that bar again, she would stick it out. If Zhang Weili is about challenges, then I mean, you could beat the considered GOAT to a lot of people, Valentina, right? And then you could see if you could pick up where she left off and see if you can beat these big challenges in these bigger girls. So yeah, I think right now, like, there's just so many options for Zhang Weili, like, especially if she wins. She can always say, I just wanted to do this to dare to be great, beat the greatest, and then move back to my division and, get a couple of title defenses and call it a day, right? And I wouldn't be mad at that. I really wouldn't be mad at that because I've seen this in boxing before, fighters that move up to heavyweight. You seen Roy Jones fight John Ruiz. He didn't really stick around at heavyweight. He just did it one time because that really wasn't his body type. And there were so many other bigger threats there. So sometimes, fighters just do it as a one-off type of thing. And I could see that for Zhang Weili. But if she does stick around, and she's actually able to defend her title like a couple of times, shoot, Zhang Weili, she's going to go into running for like one of the greatest of all time. And again, that's another video we'll talk about that. Like if Zhang Weili beats Valentina and actually goes on a run at flyweight, she could go. Her resume could go up against all of them then. Because that means she would have ran through two divisions and been consistent. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But that's just how I see it right now. Really overall, like if Zhang Weili was to lose to Valentina, I wouldn't mind if she moved back down. Will she move back down? I think she would, because again, if it's like the physical challenge or even the technical challenge there, she gets handled. It'd be better off for her just to move back to her division and, go back on a run there and then call it a day. No need to go up there and, take unnecessary punishment. But if she loses a close fight, there's always Aaron Blanchfield, because that's a good fight. If she doesn't feel like her body can make 115 anymore after this fight and she feels good, Aaron Blanchfield, and you stick it out at 125 for the rest of your career. Then, hey, there's other good fights too. Her and Rose could try to run it back, So I don't think that when you look at it under the microscope, if you really look at some of the other fighters stylistically, there are some fights that Zhang Weili could win. I don't see her beating Natalia or Manon at all. I think they would handle Weili, probably even stop her. I'm going to be honest. Like, those are the 3 fighters right now, Bullet, Manon, and Natalia. I think they are terrible style matchups for Zhang Weili. But then there's style matchups that could turn into really good, dangerous challenges that she could win, like Aaron. That would be a great fight if she chooses to stick around, if she loses. Aaron's a good fight. Then, trying to get back against Rose. Let's see how they both look at 125. And even Grasso, I don't know if they'll ever fight because I know they did train together. They probably would fight. That's a good fight. That's a good fight. I think that's a doable fight when it comes to even like the physical strength. I think that they probably would match up well because, even though Zhang Weili didn't like have the strength training and flyweight, consistently like not Macy Barber, but Alexa Grasso did, just moving through the different fights to grow into it. Zhang Weili is just naturally strong. She's just naturally strong. She's really strong, so I think that she could hold her own against some of these other fighters, but some of these ones that are just so fast and so big and strong. But yeah, overall, I just think that Zhang Weili, she probably would move down if the loss is really bad. But if it's really close, she'll try to call for a rematch and stick around, or she'll probably try to fight the winner of this Aaron Tracy Cortez fight. So yeah, that's how I see it. That's how I see it right now. I think that Zhang Weili could find a home here, but I don't know if she would ever become champion. That's just my take, guys. Really up in the air. Really got to see how it goes November 15th. If she looks good and she looks physically strong, I'll probably be singing a different tune. But what do y'all think in the comment section? Combo Breaker 99. Make sure y'all subscribe. I'm out. Peace.